Many people think that dimensions are achieved or spawned or realized through extension or movement in a new direction, and this is incorrect. Dimensional phenomena is the result of relationships, and specifically feedback loop relationships, or in other words, something in relation to itself. This is similar to mathematical theory or philosophy, wherein nothing or the empty set or zero, when considered, becomes something altogether in itself just from considering it. Thus, there is something and it is nothing. Likewise, there is necessarily a set which could be said to contain the empty set, also known as zero. Thus, the set of the empty set is actually the concept of the number 1, and 2 is merely the set of the empty set, known as 1, and so forth goes all mathematical phenomena. Applying this to dimensional theory, we see that what is said to be the zeroth dimension is but a point. Another point in whatever direction actually necessitates a dimension and is known as a line. Thus, it could be said merely understanding a point's relationship to a point results in the concept of a line, which is the first dimension. Likewise, a line's relationship to another line, even if parallel, necessitates the second dimension, which is known as a plane. Contort the plane however you want in the third, and you will never necessitate the third dimension. Rather, once you consider another plane, then you have your third dimension. It is called space. And this is where the buck stops for most people before they begin to postulate what persists beyond this point. Three dimensions and no more, say some. Others come up with irrational or illogical shapes and call it a dimension. This is due to the fact that they think in terms of extending or extension, which is working backwards, which you will see. Space is everywhere. The third dimension, space is everywhere, so one cannot extend in the traditional sense. So when you relate space to another space, what you now have is a concept which can best be described as the following: a partition, a density, a shape, an amount. But the best way to describe this is an object. Seems simple, right? So let's continue. Thus, the fourth dimension is spatial density, or better known as an object. The fourth dimension is an object, or a partition of space. When an object is related to another object, we have a new concept known as something very much like time. If only one object exists in space, it cannot be said to be moving, nor can it be said to be anywhere at all, or changing in whatever way. It is completely static. However, relate that object to another object, and a relative position can be drawn. And so can it be said that anything is even occurring, since a change in relationship is said to be a progression of time. Thus, the fifth dimension is time, or better, a relationship between objects. When a relationship between objects is related to a relationship between objects, what we now have is a complexity, or better known as a system. Just one more object, in fact, necessitates two different relationships between all parties. Our bodies are not merely objects, for instance, but systems. Indeed, our solar system, which is a relationship between all the local celestial bodies, is exactly that, a system. Thus, the sixth dimension is system. When a system is related to another system, we have a grand system, or an organization, or in other words, an abstract concept, or better known as a metaphysical entity. These are varied and are referred to daily in common tongue. A baseball game is a metaphysical entity because it requires the inner working of players, which are themselves systems. In fact, elements of the grand system are not referred to as systems, but rather they are known as subsystems or organs. Consciousness and the abstract concept of the self are described not as objects which exist, so to speak, in the real world, but are said to be abstract notions, or what is known as the real world, are said to be abstract notions. Thus, the seventh dimension is known as organization, or metaphysical object, or abstraction, or abstract concept, like baseball team. When a system is related to another system, we get relationships which consist of subsystems relating to their own systems and grand systems relating to another grand system, subsystems, and so forth. This is known as attribution, category, subsystemization, property possession, employ, or patronage. This is not unknown or difficult to conceive. For instance, a baseball game is a system, but it is a relationship known as a struggle between two subsystems known as baseball teams, which possess different properties. The baseball game is said to be won by whatever team wins, and thus there is a relationship between the subsystems and the system itself that they make as a result of their relationship to each other. But this can be extrapolated upon thusly. A player might be paid off to sabotage and throw the game for the other team. Thus that player is not actually a member of the team he is dressed for, but is actually a member of the other team by virtue of his relationship to the intended outcome of the game, or in other words, his relationship to the grand system via possession of attributes possessed by that opposite team. Likewise, attributes are similarly described as relationships to grand systems. If I have the property of red hair, then I am a subsystem within the abstract concept of red hair. If I dye my hair, I am a subsystem of the category of red-haired people who dyed their hair, and on and on. A subsystem is essentially a property. An entire person can be a subsystem, and thus an entire person can be a property like that of a property of a team or persons being a member of said team. In fact, any random person is actually a member of many different abstract concepts or grand systems, since they contain many different properties. Like, I'm a mammal and I have red hair and I have 2 legs, etc. So I am a subsystem of multiple patrons and multiple grand systems. Thus it is said not to be two, but contain many different properties. Indeed, the concept of identity is for any two things to be said to possess all the same properties. So I'll read that again. Indeed, the concept of identity is for any two things to be said to possess all the same properties. Thus it is said not to be two but one, if they contain all the same properties and the same thing. This relationship between properties and subsystems is best related to the concepts presented in actually polytheism. For instance, using red hair again, redheads born in ancient Egypt were once burned alive because they were said to possess the attribute which was possessed by the Egyptian god of foreigners, Set. That's them relating attributes to a grand, abstract concept of red hair, essentially. Thus, the system of red hair is a patron of those subsystems who possess that property. Thus, the 8th dimension is property or patronage, or relationships between systems. Okay, the 9th dimension is relationships between all properties and all patrons, between all subsystems and all systems. It's actually better to say all properties and all patrons. It is essentially a relationship between everything scaled up and down in scope. This results in the ultimate system. Right? So if you consider everything, this results in the ultimate, essentially, the ultimate collection of everything. This results in something similar to conceptions of perfection, necessity, and existence. The 9th dimension is known as everything. The 10th relationship is a relationship between everything and those which are not everything. This is known as something similar to morality, or behavior, or virtue, or wisdom. Okay? Just taking into account, like if if a biological agent invades my body system and it is, not, contrary to the ends of my body system, then my body purges it, So when you consider the system of everything, what you basically come to understand is something similar to whether or not you groove with that overall system. It's similar to the concepts of God or the way of things, or the universe, which is basically something similar to morality, behavior, virtue, wisdom. Okay, so